Welcome, everybody. Congratulations on breaking to finals at the tournament. Everybody should feel really proud of themselves. So the order of speakers is going to be as follows. This is what's just decided in tab room. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize. And I'm sure you'll correct us when it's your turn to speak. So first off, we have Kashika. Second, Sophie. Third, Vihan. Fourth, Bala. Fifth, Sarah. And sixth, Vanya. So again, I'll tell everybody as you're going, or as we're going, who's up and who's up next. But it's going to be Kashika, Sophie, Behan, Bala, Sarah, and Vanya. Okay. I saw a hand. Do you still have a question, or did I answer? Okay. So then, whenever everybody is ready, I'll go ahead and mute myself, and we are going to start with Kashika.
Should I just start when I'm ready? What is the deal with these fairy tales? Jack on the Beanstalk, for example, he climbs a beanstalk, finds a golden goose that just happens to lay golden eggs. That's some odd level of luck. Or Cinderella, where everything is perfect. Flawless dress, a pumpkin that turned into a carriage, a hunky prince. I mean, I'm all for that. But let's be honest, who's buying it? Oh, and remember Goldilocks, the girl who broke into a, a bear's house just because nothing was ever just right? She's basically the poster child for perfectionism, trying every chair, every bed, and every bowl of porridge until she finds the perfect fit. But here's the real twist. We're all a little bit like Goldilocks. We're all constantly searching for that just right, the need to find perfection in imperfect things. And while perfectionism may seem like just wanting everything in order and on time, it's a very real problem that's affecting people everywhere. This brings us to my topic today, perfectionism. Perfectionism is a problem because it can lead to severe mental health issues, anxiety, and self doubt, as the pressure to meet unattainable standards prevents individuals from finding true peace and self acceptance. You might be wondering, why does this matter to me? Well, perfectionism isn't just a quirky trait we see in storybook characters, it's a problem that affects people everywhere, especially the younger generation. Teens are constantly bombarded with unrealistic expectations, whether through social media, academic pressure, or even family dynamics. They are told that they need to be perfect, flawless in every way. This mentality not only creates stress and anxiety, but to can also harm emotional and mental well-being. As someone who cares about the future of children, it's crucial to recognize how perfectionism is shaping our lives and how we as a society can help break free from this relentless pursuit. So let's open our storybooks, and first I will tell you exactly what perfectionism is and how it's affecting us. And then we can recognize the roots that fuel it, whether it's societal pressures, self-doubt, or social media. Then, finally, I will show you what will happen if we let go of the need for perfection, if we embrace imperfection and foster a healthier, more accepting environment. Perfectionism is no longer just a personal struggle. It has become a societal epidemic deeply embedded in today's culture and lives, especially among the youth. Imagine waking up every morning feeling like nothing you do is good enough, no matter how hard you work or how much you try. The pressure to be perfect looms over you. Research shows that perfectionism has spiked in recent years. An article by Jessica A. Kent states that 85.4% of young adults have reported an increase in perfectionist tendencies, mostly due to academic and social pressure. This relentless chase for perfection isn't a mere drive for success, it's a cycle of self criticism and fear. The more we strive for flawless outcomes, the less we embrace mistakes and growth. Perfectionism becomes a prison, locking us in a constant state of anxiety. It's no longer about being about excellence, but about meeting unattainable standards set by external forces. The fear of failure is so tense that even the thought of a mistake can become unbearable. Whether in school, the workplace, or social media, we're constantly bombarded by this distorted version of reality that pushes us to be perfect. The true tool of perfectionism, however, goes far beyond missed opportunities for growth. It destroys us from the inside out. This constant striving for meeting unattainable ideals can severely lead to mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and self-doubt. In fact, an article from 2018 by BBC powerfully states that perfectionism has been linked to a laundry list of clinical health issues such as depression, OCD, and even suicide. The root of perfectionism, however, is fear, not the love of excellence, the paralyzing fear of failure, of judgment, and rejection. Cultural and familial expectations fuel this fear. Parents with high expectations, coupled with academic systems that prize perfection, create an environment where children feel like their worth is tied to flawless performance. For example, students in highly competitive programs feel like they need to meet top standards, pushing them towards perfectionism. And in cultures where academic success is revered as a gateway to prosperity, the fear of failure is a driving force, perpetuating the need for perfection. While perfectionism, while perfectionism may seem like an inescapable force, there is hope. Yes, hope. You're not doomed to live a life of flawless frustration. In fact, breaking free from perfection is not only possible, but highly encouraged. One tool to do this is self-compassion. Because hey, if we can't give ourselves a little love, who do you expect to? When our friend messes up, we'll say, hey, it's okay. You'll get them next time. But when we mess up, we often say, how dare you, self? You should be ashamed. But by cultivating self compassion, we break free from this cycle. Instead of berating ourselves for every mistake, we'll learn to embrace them. Mistakes are human, and if we can't make them, then we'd be like robots, living a life monotone with metal joints every step we take. Additionally, shifting our focus from external validation to internal growth could help weaken perfectionist tendencies. Because honestly, if you're still chasing that perfect grade on your English assignment just to impress your parents, it's time to ask yourself, how many gold stars do you need before you feel validated? You're already enough. So changing our attention from pleasing others to focusing on our own growth could completely change the game. And finally, let's talk about social media, where everything seems beautiful, heaven, like a paradise, where there's flawless sunsets and matcha smoothies and perfectly cut squares of Dubai chocolate. Well, I'm here trying my best to make it to school in time. But the truth is, the people behind the screen have problems too. It's time it's time we recognize that social media is all smoke and mirrors, and the true beauty in life lies in less comparing and more, well, being. In the end, we must ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to live in? A world where perfectionism reigns, hindering creativity, growth, and positivity, or a world where we embrace imperfection and see our mistakes as opportunities, not failures. The choice is ours. So, to break free from perfectionism, we must first know what it is and how it's affecting us, and then recognize the roots that fuel it, whether it's societal pressures, family dynamics, or the toxic influence of social media. Once we recognize these forces, we can begin to reframe our relationship with achievement. By fostering self compassion and practicing more realistic self expectations, we can rebuild a healthier, more accepting approach to success. Imagine a world where we celebrate progress over perfection, a world where mistakes aren't viewed as failures but as stepping stones towards growth, a world where people are free to pursue their passions without the crushing fear of not measuring up. Like I said at the very beginning, perfectionism is like that never ending cycle of just right. But in reality, there is no perfect chair, there is no perfect bowl of porridge, and there's certainly no perfect you. So, just like Goldilocks finally found her place in the house that was just right for her, we too must find the balance that is just right for us, where we can still strive for success without losing our humanity in the process. Because it's not about being perfect, it's about being real. And once we let go of the need for perfection, we'll see that the world we've been seeking was never about just right. Instead, we'll allow ourselves to embrace the messy reality of being human, with imperfections and all. Thank you.
Thank you. For other judges, the time was 8:44. And then next up, going second, we have Sophie. And after Sophie, we'll have Vahan. Sophie, whenever you're ready.
Vihan.
Okay. Uh, please stay muted until it's your turn to speak. Okay. Sophie, whenever you're ready, you can unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
How many things do you pass on a daily basis that you just gloss over? It could be something that caught your eye on the walk to work, only for you to shrug it off. A person you heard a blip about in conversation, or a thought you can almost grasp, but not quite. Well, what if one day one of these things leads you down the most interesting rabbit holes you've ever been down? Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I decided to look more into a collection of books my grandfather had in his house. A book series which I would discover, connect back a century to a woman, and would change the lives of many. Sometimes those interesting things can be found in the things we just brush off and past every day. At least that was my experience when discovering the My Bookhouse book. Today, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you in three distinct chapters. First, My Book House as a literary success. Second, the author behind that success, Olivia Bermee Miller, and her groundbreaking role as a female publisher in the early 20th century. And finally, I'm going to explain to you how this topic is still relevant, even today. Now, the first step in my journey is just explaining to you what in the world my book house is. Originally published all the way back in 1920, My Book House was a collection of six stories for children. Six individual books that contained a multitude of stories, fables, fairy tales, and nursery rhymes. And of course, illustrations to go along with them. The goal of the books was to teach good morals to young children in the form of age relative and age appropriate writing. The books were massively successful. They saw immediate success and continued success throughout their publishing life. According to an interview published in the December 10th, 1950 issue of the Chicago Daily Tribune, the author of the books, Olivia Marie Miller, highlighted how the books taught morals to young children, even saying that the lessons that children got from these stories were far more lasting and permanent than any sermon that could ever be preached. The father to a little girl who authored the column agreed with the sentiment wholeheartedly, concurring that the My Bookhouse books did terrifically at just that, teaching good morals in the form of age-appropriate stories, so the kids who read them could digest them. Now, may I notice something? I said before that the books were published in 1920, but this article is from 1950, and that's not a mistake. The books were printed under new editions under the same publishing house until 1951. And once that publishing house was sold, they continued printing for two more decades. In total, that's over 50 years of publishing. Just for reference in the scale of this, these books were published during the childhoods of the Greatest Generation, the Silent Generation, Baby Boomers, and Gen X. That's four generations of kids who grew up with these stories. I touched on the morals bit already, but another reason these books were so popular, at least according to a gazette written by the Lincoln Historical Society, was due to their innovative use of age-relative writing. Writing that, according to the Gazette, focuses on the age of the child to grow with them. The first book was your basic nursery rhymes, lots of pictures, tiny little things. Think something like Baba Black Sheep for reference. But the books built second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth to build up to books that looked a lot more like these. They were multi-page stories with smaller font, more words, more complex grammar, and more complex themes. But, of course, still pictures. This was one of the reasons the book set was so successful. It wasn't for a specific age group, it was for the development of the child. It was innovative, it was popular, and it proved to be hyper successful. But who was the person behind the success? Whose idea were these books? Who made it happen? Olivia Bermee Miller was born in 1883. However, her journey with the book starts later in her life, after having worked as an English teacher, but before having her first child. This is when she put herself fully into her love of literature. However, it wasn't until after her daughter was born when she found her niche. Her niche being children's nursery rhymes. She wrote dozens for her daughter, sold stories here and there, and eventually she amassed enough for a collection of her very own. With the help of her husband in 1919, the My Book House for Children publishing house was founded. And just a year later, the first collection of My Book House books hit the shelves to critical success. For the years following the My Book House series, she traveled worldwide to gather information for her follow-up series, My Travel Ship. She traveled to Arabia, Sweden, China, Guatemala, and more to gather stories to bring back to her American audience from the globe. And when she and her husband divorced in 1935, she was the one who was elected vice president of the board for the publishing house upon his departure. However, it's said that the boy did try to push her out of a more managerial role. This was still the 1930s, and as a woman, she wasn't taken especially seriously in the workplace, even in a workplace that she helped cultivate. Her story is made even more impressive when we take this into account. The time period. The U.S. Women's Year, the U.S. Women's Year, the Department of Labor, didn't even exist before 1920. And the creation of the Bureau, according to it itself, was the first time the federal government had taken a practical stand on the conditions and employment of women. This is due to the sheer amount of social taboo there was for women, particularly married women, in the workplace during that time. In the early 20th century, just 20% of all women did some kind of labor force participation outside the home, and only 5% of those married did, according to Brookings. However, Olivia Marie Miller took a stand against this. She was not only a married woman who wanted a career, but a woman who ran and operated her own company. In addition to this, it wasn't just for herself that she made this vow. She employed a sales team largely comprised of women. Women were oftentimes the managers and held lead positions in her office branches. Her belief that women belonged and should be represented in the workplace was evident in her actions and her beliefs. The Dalai Lama once said, "Just as a single pebble is dropped into the water and it creates ripple effects, the actions of an individual can be long-lasting and far-reaching." When researching for this speech, I came across a 2013 blog post from Jennifer Livier about her experience with the My Book House books. In this blog, she reminisces about how growing up, she really wasn't much of a reader. Her joy and passion for literature and reading came about later in her adult life. She now works in children's publishing. There weren't a lot of books in her house growing up, but there were My Book House books. She reflects how growing up so much of her literary knowledge prior to her bookstore years came from these volumes. She writes that they paved the way for her career that would eventually blossom into a lifelong love of reading. But it wasn't just her. Under this post were so many other people who were waiting to talk about these books with someone, to share their memories about going over to a friend's house to read these books after school, how the books now sat on their shelf, well loved and well worn, how they remember reading these with a mother, a sibling, a grandfather, a friend. And reading all these people's stories, we reflect on my own stories with the books. Growing up, my mom was one of those people that did not love sleepovers. So, my core memories as first sleepovers, from the ages of maybe 3 to 7, were all at my grandparents' house. And one of my favorite memories from those was when my grandfather would read me stories to help me go to sleep at night. 9 times out of 10, they were my book house stories. I remember how he would pick each one up. The books were over 100 years old, maybe at that point, and he'd flip through the pages delicately. As I got older, I would wander into his office where they were kept and flip through them by myself, like they were made of delicate sand, trying not to break the pages. I remember reading them with my grandfather, and my grandfather remembers reading them with his own mother. The great grandmother I never got to meet. My mom remembers reading these stories with my grandfather, how he would read to her when he got home from work. They traveled with my grandfather as he transferred in the military, traveling 3,000 miles until they found their home in Seattle, the city where I was born, raised, and read to in. So, as we conclude today's story, I have for you a reminder. Books can be impactful and interesting even beyond the page. People can and do make a significant impact even if you've never heard their name, and even though the story of my book house is closed, so many continue to remember the lessons they were taught by these books. So go, pick up a book. You never know what you might uncover under its pages. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. The time for other judges was 10:12 on that speech. Next up, we have Vihan, and then after that, we have Bala. So whenever you are ready, Vihan, you can go ahead and unmute.
All three of you could hear and see me, right? All three of you, judges? Okay. So then I'll go whenever the three of you are ready for me. Imagine beginning every day with a short, easy, yet intense exercise that strengthens your body, calms your mind, and aligns you with something much greater. This is what sun salutation is all about. Sun salutation is more than just a fitness routine. It's a moving meditation in action, a flowing sequence of moments and breaths that awaken awareness, balance emotions, and bring a profound sense of connection. In a world beset by stress and disease, sun salutation shines as a complete answer to strength, flexibility, and peace of mind. Why did I choose this topic? I chose this topic because sun salutation has helped me tremendously more than just fitness levels by helping me gain mental toughness. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the 12 poses of sun salutation. But first, let's start out with a little joke. Why did the yoga student bring a ladder to the yoga class? Can anybody guess? Because they wanted to reach their highest self. That was a good joke. This was supposed to be a joke, but I find some of this real. Let's find out why. Now, let's dive into the 12 poses of sun salutation, all leading to a harmonious sequence. Some of these names may sound complex, but I'm going to try to break it down for you as much as possible to help you understand the meaning of each pose. First up is Pranam Asana. Pranam stands for a respectful bow or salute. FYI, I will be referring to the person doing the sun salutation as yogi. In this stage, the yogi joins their hands together and takes a deep breath. This is followed by Hasta Uttanasana. Hasta stands for hands, Uttana stands for raising them up. In this stage, the yogi is basically arching their hands backwards while taking a deep breath, connecting themselves with the earth. This is followed by a complex pose called Hasta Padasana. Hasta stands for hands, Pada stands for feet. In this stage, the yogi joins both their hands and feet without bending their legs. Next up is Ashwa Sanchalasana. Ashwa stands for a horse. In this stage, the yogi is basically performing a forward lunge with one leg, mimicking a horse trotting. This is followed by Dandasana. Danda stands for punishment. In this stage, the yogi is basically performing a plank. Next up is Ashtanga Namaskara. Namaskar stands for respected bow or reverence to the Almighty. This is almost the same as Pranam Asana. However, the yogi is on the ground, basically performing a push-up. This gets them ready for our next pose, the Cobra Snake pose, Bhujanga Asana. Bhujanga stands for a cobra snake. In this stage, the yogi maintains their push-up pose while looking upwards, mimicking a cobra lifting its hood up. This is followed by Bhagavat Asana. Bhagavat stands for a mountain. In this stage, the yogi is basically shaping their body in the shape of a mountain. As you can see right here, the next four are a repetition of what we talked about before. Aswashantalasana, Hastapadasana, Hasta Uttanasana, and Pranam Asana. Wow. So we have performed stretching, planks, push-ups, and this all helps with sequencing. As you can see, we move on a sequential manner from the arms to the legs to the soul. What about those who cannot perform such complex poses? Good news, there is a modified version called Chair Sun Salutation. Here, the yogis still perform some similar routines as the traditional version of sun salutation. Example, inhalation, exhalation, stretching head and neck, but do not strain their bodies much by doing the complex poses such as planks and push-ups. The details of this version are another topic for another day, but there are some benefits to this chair sun salutation as well, which I will discuss later. Also, what's better than getting energy from our most powerful energy source in the solar system, the sun? Now, let's dive into the benefits of sun salutation. Why do this? I divided my benefits into three categories: physical benefits, mental benefits, and spiritual benefits. Let's start out with the physical benefits. First, a study from the PubMed Central stated that sun salutation enhances fitness levels, improves coordination, posture, and balance. A study from the Lifeform group said that sun salutation improves sequencing, and we can see that right here. Thirdly, a study from the Google Scholar group stated that sun salutation improves cardiovascular health, stimulating the blood circulation. Lastly, a study shown by the Mahagata.com said that chair sun salutation decreases falls of elderly people by 45%. How do these benefits happen? This is all explained by physiological changes brought on by sun salutation. A study shown by the Asian Journal of Sports Medicine stated that 24 weeks of sun salutation can improve respirational endurance, enhance muscle strength, and decrease blood pressure. Now, let's go on to the mental benefits of sun salutation. A study from the Very Well Helpline said that sun salutation enhances concentration levels and mental toughness. A study from the Helpline said that sun salutation decreases stress, and enhances the brain function. Lastly, a randomized trial session said that 1 day of sun salutation can reduce anxiety levels for a short period of time. On days that I do sun salutation before going to school, I feel a lot calmer and perform much better on tests, quizzes, sports, contests, etc. Now, let's go on to the moment you've all been waiting for: spiritual benefits. First, a study shown by the Yoga Renew Teacher Group said that sun salutation enhances gratitude in the yogi. Lastly, a study shown by some group said that sun salutation enhances mindfulness. In conclusion, sun salutation is more than just a fitness routine. It's a moving meditation in action. I hope that I have clarified the holistic nature of sun salutation, a routine that nurtures your mind, body, and soul. And here's the best part: it costs nothing for gym equipment, powder, etc. All it takes is a few of your breaths, and all of this can be done in the convenience of your home. So, would you like to try sun salutation and see the change for yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. The time was 7:55 for other judges. Okay. So next up, we have Bala, and then after Bala, we have Sarah.
Raise your hand if you were ever overconfident about something. Well, I was, and you guys probably listening in the audience have too. And that is normal at many times. I've been overconfident, and it can be present in anyone's mind whenever they get a little bit too cocky. But when your life is on the line and you're taking all the risks, overconfidence should just not be present. That is exactly what happened with Japan in World War II, named by History.com and many other sources as the largest and deadliest conflict in human history. But why is it? Why is World War II named by History.com and other sources as the largest and deadliest conflict in human history? Well, it is because it took place in two different regions, Europe and Asia. But more specifically, I'm going to talk about the Asia region. What was so important in the Asia region towards how World War II panned out? Well, it was those few crucial battles that took place between America and Japan, with one of them being the very crucial Battle of Midway. Maybe some of you guys listening in the audience have relatives or ancestors who have fought in this battle, or in the war itself. That is one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this topic, in order to recognize these people who have fought in a way, and also to talk about what made this battle so important. World War II is a crucial battle between America and Japan that took place because of three main reasons. The first being how the battle was not fought on land, two, the different advantages America had over Japan, and three, the important effects of Japan's overconfidence, which cost them the battle. Many battles that were fought on land had guns or weapons and army had protection. However, the Battle of Midway was different. This battle was fought in the air over water, as shown in this representation painting by R.G. Smith. But why? Why is that? Why is this factor of the battle being fought in air over water so important? Well, it is because it gave an advantage to one of the two countries that fought, and that country is America. America had a huge naval advantage over Japan, and they had the upper hand. Michael Ray from the website Britannica states that the Battle of Midway was almost fought completely in the air over water, in which the United States destroyed Japan's first-line career strength and most of its best-trained naval pilots. This is the Japanese heavy cruiser Kaga, which was destroyed by the US Navy. This evidence from Michael Ray proves my point that America had a very big advantage over Japan. However, the advantages do not end there for America. America had so many other advantages. The most important ones were that they had a major air and submarine base called Midway Atoll, as shown in this picture. This gave them an area of power. And they also had way more powerful weapons to use than Japan's weapons. Japan's goal in this battle was to seize the Midway Islands, to take control of the Pacific. But with America being in the way, there was not a huge chance of them doing it. This base that they had gave them an area of power, and it blocked Japan's goal. In addition, Japan thought they had more power in numbers than America. Japan, what are you doing? In a battle where your country is pretty much on the line fighting against America to win this war, and you're being cocky, you're showing so much attitude. Again, Michael Ray from website Britannica stated that it was World War II which conclusively demonstrated the strategic importance of Midway. In 1940, the US began work on a major air and submarine base there. This is another picture of the US-based Midway Atoll taken in 4 June 1942. History.com states that Japan's efforts to establish clear naval air superiority first hit a snag in the Battle of the Coral Sea. Despite the setback, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who is this person right here, taken in 1940, commander of the Imperial Japanese Navy, was convinced his forces enjoyed a numerical advantage over the Americans. These points from Britannica and History.com really give proof that Japan were about to underestimate their opponent. And at the end of the battle, Japan took the full brunt of the ride. They lost so much power, and America proved therefore wrong. Furthermore, the Japanese public did not even know they lost. They actually announced the victory because it was kept a secret. When looking at casualties, Japan lost so many more than America because America was more watchful and Japan was not being the most best and most confident people that they should be. Author Sawaichi Issei, in the book Shattered Sword, The Untold Story of the Battle of Midway, stated that in all, Japan had lost as many as 3,000 men, more than 300 aircraft, 4 aircraft carriers, and 1 heavy cruiser in the battle. When looking at America's, Japan's was way larger. America had way less when looking at this side. Author Herbert P. Bix, in the Pulitzer Prize awarded book Hirohito on the Making of Modern Japan, stated that much of the military command structure were kept in the dark about the extent of the defeat, the Japanese public announcing a great victory. Only Emperor Hirohito, who is this person right here, taken in 1935, and the highest Navy command staff were accurately informed of the carrier and personnel losses. This evidence from Issei and Bix in their respective books really give proof that Japan went through a lot of chaos at the end of the battle, and they lost the war, and they did not fulfill their goal of expanding their territory in the Pacific. You know, this end of the battle really reminded me of that one meme, called This Is Fine, where the dog's in the middle of the flames sitting on the table. That is exactly what Japan's loss reminded me of. That picture. Although I don't know whether my relatives or ancestors fought in this battle or not, there was another main reason why I wanted to do this topic. It was ninth grade in World War Studies. It was ninth grade in World Studies, and I started learning about World War II. First, it was Europe, and then it was Asia that I learned about. But I was way more interested in the battles that took place in Asia, because that was what finished the war. And the Battle of Midway most really interested me, apart from the Battle of the Coral Sea or the other battle that took place. The Battle of Midway was so crucial that it changed the tide of the war completely. So that is why I chose this topic. In conclusion, the Battle of Midway was a crucial battle that took place between America and Japan to pretty much end World War II because of three important reasons. To repeat, the battle was not even fought on land. Two, America had so many more important advantages that gave them the upper hand and won them the battle. And three, how Japan's overconfidence paid them the price. Overall, this speech should not just been to inform you, but also to give you a moral. Looking at Japan's performance and statistics in the war compared to America, it is safe to say that overconfidence can lead to carelessness, which eventually in turn leads to failure, as said by Sally Mackenzie. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanna. The time on that for other judges was 7:10.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. The next up we have Sarah, and then after Sarah we have Vanya.
Okay. Imagine if American Idol had less than 50% of its entire viewership voting on who they thought the best voice was. Chaos. I mean, Twitter would literally implode. Yet we treat our actual political leaders with much less enthusiasm than any reality TV show. But today, we're going to talk about how we can make voting just as engaging as any reality TV show, but in a situation where the stakes are much higher. The United States must implement a policy of compulsory voting, which means that there needs to be a law in place to require a citizen to fulfill the responsibility to vote. Because apparently, I'm busy scrolling isn't a valid excuse for ignoring democracy anymore. Compulsory voting teaches young voters that of part of being a citizen includes having civic knowledge, civic duty, and exercising your civic responsibility, all while sharing diverse perspectives in the political decision process. They also need to represent their demographic to not only participate, but to become proactive about policy. This has the potential to increase politically and socially aware societies that can advocate for themselves and protect their rights. First, I will explore the current state of elections in the United States, before then talking about compulsory voting and all that it has to offer for a nation. And lastly, I will discuss the positive impacts that this reform can have on voting in America. And trust me, it's going to be a lot more exciting for everyone that lives here. Currently, many Americans aren't voting in major elections, and this is a concern for many because of skewed election results and data. While many people in the West in democratic countries love to exercise their rights to the fullest, like freedom of speech, thinking, and free will, they don't often fulfill their responsibilities to protect these rights unless it directly impacts them. In addition, Many voters that don't agree with either candidate or don't understand the policies just don't show up to voting at all. And this can lead to many long-term issues, such as a non-representative, oppressive government that can lead to less patriotism over a long period of time. In fact, according to Pew Institute research from November of 2016, they find that in the 2012 presidential election, only 55% of all Americans came to vote. In addition, in a more recent NPR News article from December of 2024, finds that in the recent 2024 presidential election, the number was 63.9%. Big difference, am I right? But America can do better, which is why compulsory voting is so essential to implement in today's society. Compulsory voting in the United States can ensure that voting systems increase voter turnout and representation and ensure a more educated population in politics and current world affairs. Compulsory voting can solve all of these things and has been used in many democratic nations. In fact, according to Chris Weller's 2016 Business Insider article, he finds that nations like Belgium and Turkey, which require voting, see 87% and 84% of their entire population coming to the polls to cast their ballots. And even though America prides itself to be one of the most prominent democracies in the world, we see countries like Belgium and Turkey that are beating voter turnout rates. And that is something that America significantly needs to work on. In addition, countries like Australia, another prominent democracy that exercises compulsory voting, they see a $50 charge the first time someone doesn't vote and $20 every time after that. And while this policy might sound absolutely insane right now, it's insane policies like these that really make the difference in countries and their democratic systems. In fact, even though compulsory voting hasn't been used by every single democracy in the world, it definitely guarantees a much higher voter turnout and definitely more people that exercise their rights to vote. And while I'm not saying that compulsory voting can solve all of the problems that we might face in American democracy, and it can actually lead to its fair share of problems to the table, such as a lack of facilities, voter fraud, spoiled ballots, and voter detachment from democracy due to the negative ideas associated with being forced to vote. It's definitely a step in the right direction, and it is a step that is absolutely essential for us to take. In fact, we can solve a lot of these problems just by adapting compulsory voting specifically to the United States and critiquing the ways that other nations have employed it in the past. For example, Chris Weller introduces a significant solution to a lot of the problems we might see with compulsory voting through a policy called None of These Candidates. Essentially, none of these candidates was first used in America in 1975 in Nevada, where if voters went to the polls to cast their ballot and they weren't sure about either candidate, they would choose this option. In fact, none of these candidates became so widespread that the very next year, in 1976, it was used by the Republican primary election. And while this might not seem like it has as big of an impact right now, it's actually quite the opposite. We saw so many people going to vote, and even if they weren't sure about the policies, at least they were being educated about what was going on around them and what political leaders around them stood for and believed in. It's steps like these that can really make the difference and make a large impact long term. In addition, in a recent 2024 article by Shane Singh from the University of Chicago, he finds that by implementing a policy like compulsory voting, it sends a societal signal and changes the psychology of many voters, essentially telling them that it is wrong to neglect their civil duties to vote. By increasing compulsory voting and by increasing our voter turnout, we can this can lead to a much better voting system in America that can improve infrastructure and citizens' attitudes to their countries. And while these are some of the many impacts that compulsory voting can have, it's now time to discuss exactly what compulsory voting means specifically for the United States. For starters, it can significantly improve the infrastructure of our governments and of our country. For example, casting a ballot in an election today in the United States is extremely difficult. In fact, in the Georgia governor election in 2018, just weeks leading up to polling and voting, 1.4 million voter registrations were canceled. Think of all of the lives and voices that were silenced, and think of all of the blame that was put on many government leaders on voter fraud. It's things like these that really deter American democracy, and it's quite embarrassing actually, considering that America considers itself as one of the most prominent democracies in the world. Yet we don't have infrastructure that can carry everybody and allow everyone's voices to be heard. It's things like these that definitely need fixing and can definitely be implemented with a policy like compulsory voting because it will lead to more voter turnouts, and the United States will have to be prepared to account for all permanent citizens living here. In the same study by Shane Singh in 2024, he also finds that compulsory voting can bridge the socioeconomic divide because it brings the socioeconomically disadvantaged to the polls versus the largest demographic of voters, which are the older and wealthier populations. However, it is key for the government to make these changes now. If compulsory voting isn't employed in America soon, it will only increase the polarization of our people. And the splitting up of our people is extremely dangerous, especially since Americans come from various backgrounds and have various needs that need to be met by the government. Especially after the recent presidential election, we saw so many people, our one united nation, break into so many different parts because of all of their various emotions and opinions about what happened. They wanted to see various things happen in our country, but instead we got a whole nother set of them. It is now time, and it is now more important than ever to have a unified government that can essentially account for everyone's needs at once. Which is why, when we talked about voting in America today, the situation might seem bleak and it might seem quite daunting to counter, but it is important to remember that there are solutions out there to counter the lack of voter turnout in America, such as compulsory voting. And it's also important to note that it has so many more beneficial impacts than what I talked about today. And it is definitely a step forward in the right direction to improving American democracy. And so the key takeaway today is to make sure that you stay aware of what's happening around you, showing up to the polls and casting your ballots, just voting, and making the changes in the right way, through the way that our country was essentially founded upon. By protecting our democracy and protecting our right to vote, you are taking the steps in the right direction to improving America's democracy. Thank you.
And thank you, Sarah. For other judges, the time for that was 9 minutes and 50 seconds. And then last up, we have our last speaker, Vanya.
Hi, I'm Vanya Ahuja, and today I'll be speaking to you about why it's better if school starts later in the morning. Have you ever sat in your first period math class staring at the board, but your brain still feels like it's asleep? If so, you're not alone, and there's scientific reason for that. Across the US, millions of middle and high school students wake up between 5 and 6:30 a.m. just to make it to school on time. But our brains are not wired to function this early, especially as adolescents. According to research published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine, teens experience a natural delay in their circadian rhythms, which means their brains don't often fully wake up until 8:30 a.m. or later. This mismatch between student sleep and early school start times leads to sleep deprivation, lower academic performance, and higher stress levels. The American Psychological Association found that 73% of high school students do not get the recommended 8 to 10 hours of sleep. This chronic exhaustion has serious consequences. In fact, one study published in Sleep Health showed that students starting school after 8:30 a.m. got more rest, performed better on standardized tests, and reported fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety. So, this raises the question, should the school day start later in the morning? Yes, definitely. And not only because it feels better, it is backed up by science, student experience, and even international data. Starting school later helps improve academic outcomes, supports mental health, and makes school stronger and more successful overall. Academic performance improves with more sleep. Let's begin with learning. Teens need 8 to 10 hours of sleep, but most don't even get 7. Why? Because they're expected to wake up before their brains are even fully alert. A 2018 study by the University of Washington shows us that delaying school by only 1 hour gave students 34 more minutes of sleep, leading to a 4.5% improvement in grades and better attendance overall. We found that students slept more and performed better across the board, said lead researcher Gideon Dunster. And this isn't an isolated case. According to a nationwide CDC report, schools with later start times report fewer tardies, better test scores, and lower dropout rates. If just one small schedule shift can lead to such higher achievements, better focus, and longer retention, why would we not make that shift for all students? Let's talk about mental health and how it benefits from adequate rest. Mental health is something that every student and teacher notices but isn't always in the curriculum. Chronic sleep deprivation has been linked to anxiety, depression, and emotional instability, especially within teens. According to the American Psychological Association, students in schools start with later start times report significantly fewer cases of depression and stress. As psychologist Dr. Wendy Troxel explains, sleep is not optional. It is a biological necessity for learning, mood regulation, and overall well-being. A well-rested student is not only happier, they're more present and less reactive, and more motivated. This leads to calmer classrooms and stronger school communities. Rebuttal. But what about after-school activities? Now, some might argue that starting school later would interfere with after-school activities like sports, jobs, family responsibilities, or other extracurriculars. But here's the reality. Many schools have shifted their school start times to later and have found little to no disruption. A report from Brookings Institution shows that athletic performance and extracurricular participation stayed the same or actually improved. Why? Because students had more energy, fewer injuries, and better mental stamina. And with better scheduling, schools can easily shift activity blocks or partner with local programs to support these changes. We do not need to choose between learning and life when we can make time for both. My experience it is not just research, it is real. As a freshman, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. just to catch the bus. And by the time reach my first class, I'm already feeling drained, foggy. I'm yawning, and I barely am able to focus. And I'm not alone. My classmates say the same thing. Mornings feel like a struggle just to stay awake, let alone learn. Even my teachers have noticed how students behave differently depending on the time of our school day. Some have told us that we're more focused, respectful, and engaged during later classes or on days when school starts later. And honestly, the difference between normal school start days and delayed start days is like night and day. On those rare late start mornings, I feel more alert, motivated, and genuinely excited to participate. It doesn't just change how I feel, it changes how I learn. It is clear that when we are well rested, we're not just better learners, but we're better classmates and better people to be around. That's not just failing, that is something educators see and deal with every day. It is time to wake up to the truth. In conclusion, starting school is not just a wish, it is a solution backed up by science, student voices, and real world success. It improves sleep, grades, mental health, and equity. And when students thrive, the school thrives, with better academic performance, happier learners, and stronger, more connected communities. The ripple effect goes even further. When higher student achievements lead to improved standardized test scores, higher graduation rates, and better attendance, all of which contribute to a stronger school ranking and reputations. These gains can also attract additional funding and grants, benefiting not only individual students, but the entire school system. So, if starting school later makes us smarter, healthier, and happier, maybe the real test isn't the standardized exam. It's whether the people who run our school can finally hit the snooze button on those outdated schedules. So, here's the final question. If we have the power to help students feel better, think better, and learn better, why haven't we done it yet? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For other judges, the time on that was 5:20. And that was all of our speakers. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you for a wonderful, interesting round. Congratulations again to making it for making it to finals. And you should see your ranks and your ballots, I believe, tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Guys,
you.
judges, if you
Thank you,
could please stay
judges.
till you finish your ballots. Students, great job. You are free to leave. Judges, I'll stay here and just let me know when you're done. I just want students really quick. Thank you to the judges for being here on this weekend. We really appreciate you, judges. All right, Vanya.
First of all, I just want to say how I appreciate the judges being here, and also I was just wondering how you said that the ballots would be out tomorrow. So does that mean in the portal it was called
Right, the ballots, I wouldn't say tomorrow. I would say within probably the next 2 days, maybe
Okay.
more Monday or Tuesday. And if for some reason you can't access them, you can just grab your coach and they'll help you, okay?
All right, okay. And it should be an Airtable in that time?
It'll be in tab room.
Oh, tap room. All right, got it. Okay,
or your
thank you.
coaches will have it. No problem. Anybody else?
Finished
All
with
right,
our
great job,
ballots. Are we
students.
good to go?
Yeah, as soon as you submit your ballots, you're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording.